So in this segment, we're going to be talking about the government being urged not to cut universal credit, um, and so there's a Labour motion. It's a non-binding thing happening today. I'm not sure what the result is yet, but yeah, let's just dig into this and talk about why this is a very stupid thing for the government to be doing. Incredibly stupid. So universal credit benefit increase only temporary, says Dominic Raab. So a decision on whether £20 a week rise in universal credit will be kept in place is unlikely before March's budget, a top minister has indicated. Campaigners say the uplift is worth more than £1,000 a year and has been a lifeline for vulnerable people during the pandemic. Labour will use a Commons debate on Monday to add pressure to ministers to agree to extend it beyond the 31st of March. So that's when the £20 a week uplift is going to end not March, April. So it'd be in the April month that the money will be cut. But Raab said it was a temporary measure and the budget would spell out support in the round. What? It's just these people and their words. In an interview with Andrew Marr, the Foreign Secretary confirmed that Conservative MPs would be told to abstain in Monday's debate, meaning Labour's opposition day will be approved, while the budget will not be binding on ministers and won't have to change policy. The BBC's Ben Wright said not opposing it represents an attempt by the government to neutralise the issue for the time being, so they don't have to deal with it right away. We're in January now. This issue won't crop up, I think, until is the budget going in March? I think something like that. It showed, he added, how concerned ministers are about the prospect of a rebellion by Tory MPs, many of whom who want an end to the uncertainty over the issue if they had been asked to vote against it. And the thing is, if some of these red wall Tories specifically have to vote against this increase, they're going to face a lot of problems next time out, I think, in the next election. And if there's one thing politicians are desperate for, is to keep their seat. The standard universal credit allowance, which is claimed by more than 5.5 million households, was increased by £20 a week in April 2020 as part of Rishi Sunak's early COVID economic response. While it was designed as a temporary response to help those unable to work or struggling due to the lockdown, opposition parties and charities say failing to extend will cause real hardship for hundreds of thousands of people. And it's absolutely correct that a lot of people are reliant on this money, and this money goes straight back into the economy. This money will go straight back into the economy because poor people can't afford to save. Hardship warning. So the Joseph Rowntree Foundation has suggested about 16 million people will be directly affected, with millions of households facing an income loss of the equivalent of £1,040 a year. So the organisation has warned more than 500,000 people driven into poverty, including 200,000 children. So Boris Johnson recently said that he would make it so no child would go hungry. Where's that guy at? While a further 500,000 of those already in poverty find themselves in even worse hardship. So 500,000 of the country's poorest will become even poorer due to the callousness of this government. Its director to this, the Rowntree Foundation, Helen Bernard, said a decision could not be delayed any longer. The Chancellor has said the economy is going to get worse before it gets better. And now evidence shows it is those with the least who are often suffering the most. No one can seriously argue that cutting support for those on the lowest incomes in April will do anything other than weaken our fragile economy. And absolutely she's correct, because, like I said, that money goes back into the economy. When you give poorer people money, they can afford to buy things, essentials, pay bills. If they don't do that, they go into debt, or they can become homeless because they can't afford to pay their household budget. Asked whether the government should act now, Mr. Raab said on Monday's debate was a political move by the opposition, not about the government's overall financial response. And this is what annoys me about this government. Everything that goes against everything Labour say, it's political, helping poor people, that's political. It's like, you're making the choice, you clown, to make the poorest people in this country even poorer. You are making that choice. That is a political decision from you. It's not an economic decision, because economics will tell you giving money to poorer people is generally a good thing because it helps stimulate the economy. That's why Biden, Americans are pushing for more stimulus money, because when you give that money to poorer people, what does it do? It helps the economy because that money goes into the economy. Poorer people can afford to buy more things when they go shopping, buy more things that maybe is just outside of the normal budget, the essentials budget. That money goes back into the economy. What is it that these conservative people, these conservative MPs and politicians and the ideology don't understand is that the money, trickle-down economics doesn't work, but it can work in reverse. You can give money to poor people and that money will go up into the economy. It will trickle up. But they don't understand. He promised to look at everything in the round to make sure support for the most vulnerable was available. And if you're trying to make support available for poor people, just keep this measure that's been put in place here. You're doing the bare minimum, and now you're not even doing that anymore. Obviously, in March, this is reading from the article, there will be a budget where, again, the holistic approach can be taken by the Chancellor, but we've put that support in place to make sure that the most vulnerable communities can be protected at this very difficult time. Protected from who? Protected from you. because you failed to deal with the pandemic. That means a lot more people have been let go from jobs. And what does that mean? They're on universal credit, and now you're going to cut universal credit. The government says that it's injected an extra $7 billion into the welfare system during the pandemic, including boosting working tax credit by more than £1,000 a year for a 12-month period. Labour has urged the government to see sense on universal credit, saying that it would be both morally and economically wrong to take £1,000 a year from Britain's families at the peak of the unemployment crisis. And I think that increase to universal credit should stay permanent, and they should be looking at increasing the amount because people need the money. People are desperate. This is more about the vote. Boris Johnson has been urged to give millions of families a helping hand. You've got some Conservative rebels here. Stephen Crabb, a guy who ran for Conservative Party leader a few years ago. He's thinking about voting. I think, let's have a look here. It should say specifically, told the BBC he would be voting with the Labour, and said that although there had been difficult pressures on the Chancellor, extending the increase for 12 months was the right thing to do. So you have Conservative MPs who are willing to rebel on this. This is not the biggest rebellion in the world, purely because this is a non-binding motion, so nothing will come of this if the government loses. But the simple fact is, this is a decision. This is a political decision made by the government. This is not an economic decision, because economics will tell you that giving money to poorer people is the right thing to do, because that money goes back into the economy. Sir Keir Starmer said that the increase was a vital safety net for those who had lost their jobs, seen their working hours slashed, or who were not eligible for the government's wage subsidy furlough scheme, because the furlough scheme was good, but it wasn't great, because a lot of people were missed out by it. If we don't get a helping hand to families through the pandemic, then we are going to slow our economic recovery as we come out. And it's absolutely correct that one of the main reasons why our economic recovery from the 2008 recession was so slow is because these idiots implemented austerity, and that meant that people weren't getting money. People weren't poorer people's living standards weren't increasing because they didn't have the money to increase their living standards. So what does that mean? You have less disposable income, which means that you can't spend as much on luxury items, which slows down the economy. Because if you give poorer people money, they can spend the money. If you give richer people money, how many mansions are they going to buy? 6, 7, 8, 9? No, it just doesn't work. That's why a lot of these people got their money tied up in stocks or in the bank. Because after you buy 6 Ferraris, what are you supposed to buy after that? It's just ridiculous. 6 billion of the benefits bill, the difference between poverty or not for 1.2 million families, according to a think tank. You can see here the damage that this decision will make if the government do this. And while the vote is not binding and will not lead to a change in policy, it will increase pressure on the government to keep the increase to come up with an alternative. Labour said the Conservatives' decision to abstain created unnecessary uncertainty, but Minister Nadhim Zahawi said the vote was a political stunt, and that's what these people, Labour have to take a leaf out of Rashford's book and say, this is not political, this is to help the poorest people in this country. You guys are making it political by making this decision, because this decision is not made in economics, it's made out of politics, because you refuse to help the poorest people in this country once again. And so, ministers also point out extra help for housing costs through an increase in local housing allowances for those on housing benefit and hardship payments worth £670 million a year for those unable to pay their council tax bills, which is fine, but it's not enough. It's nowhere near enough, and that's the problem here. You've got another one, which is schools in England told not to provide free school meals during half term. So the government that was pushed for free school meals last time is going to be pushed again, because simply they do not want to do it. They do not want to help these children out. They do not want to help these families out. They will be forced into this by people like Marcus Rashford and other people into making this decision because they want to do the bare minimum, and right now they don't want to do that. They do not want to help poor people in this country, and if you're a poor person listening to this, they are not your friend. They are not your friend. I don't know how many times I have to stress this. They will not help you. It is not a surprise. They are not your friend. It is not a surprise.
Hey, I'm not surprised.
And here, you've got Laura Kuenssberg. This is something someone is talking about, something she said on Radio 4. Laura Kuenssberg used the word generous while describing universal credit. This is an opinion and not evidence-based journalism. It gives the distinct impression that people receiving the payout should be grateful. And Laura Kuenssberg proving herself to be an absolute joke once again, talking about credit cards being maxed out, getting involved where she shouldn't be. Client journalism at its finest. But yeah, enough taking a dig at her again, as much as she deserves it. This is the government again at war with poor people, and I want to see more from the Labour Party. They're doing all right so far. I want to see more from the opposition parties. I want to see more from them. I want to see a lot more from campaigners. Hopefully I'll play my part as well, and I hope whoever's listening out there plays their part too. But I'm going to leave it there. Let me know what you think in the comments below. Like, comment, share, subscribe, and hopefully I'll see you in the next one.